This is from a book. This is from a book I often refer to in my own life. It's sort of my junior woodchuck's manual on spiritual life. Being compassionate does not mean saying what others want to hear. It means speaking the truth in a kind of way that can help bring relief from suffering. Sometimes the recipient may find even a compassionately delivered truth to be unwelcome. Yet for the sake of being compassionate, one must find a way of saying it. When hard, truthful messages have to be given, it's crucial to be clear about intent. Always ask yourself, why am I saying this? What am I really trying to accomplish with these words? It's easy to fool ourselves when it comes to conversing with others. There are those who believe that the truth must be spoken regardless of consequences. These are those who think of themselves as brutally honest, and they consider their candor to be a noble quality. Often, however, those who pride themselves on their brutal honesty seem to get more pleasure from being brutal than being honest.
Scripture this morning is from the book of Proverbs in two different sections. The first one is chapter 13, verse 3. Those who guard their mouths keep their life, but those who talk too much go down to destruction. The second, is from book 22. Verses 10 and 11. Drive out the hateful and strife goes with them. Abuse and discord go too. Those who value loving hearts and nurturing words will have powerful people as friends.
About 3 years ago, Diane and I had a little getaway to Florida. And while there, we made a kind of routine visit to the Sturgeon Bay Public Library and Art Museum. There's a little art museum in the library there. And I always get a kick out of seeing what they have for an exhibit. And on this particular day that we came in, they had a terrific exhibit of paintings. And I was just blown away. Couldn't believe it. It wasn't what I was used to in there. The paintings were made by a graduate student from Wisconsin who was getting their degree from the University of Iowa. So I was all beside myself with happiness. And I said to Diane, well, maybe we should just look around. And there was a woman sitting at a desk who seemed to be in charge of the place, and I said, this is a great exhibit of paintings. Really enjoyed it. And she said, well, there's another exhibit upstairs, and you can take the elevator, or you can take the stairs. And I said, oh, my wife and I aren't so old that we need to take the elevator. At which point I noticed that she was in a wheelchair. And she said, well, I have this degenerative disease where I really can't walk anymore, so if I need to get upstairs, I have to take the elevator. And I said to myself, why did I say that? Why, it was one of those moments. I truly regretted saying it, of course. And the stickler of this was that I had been practicing right speech for about 3 years. I've been practicing right speech. Yet somehow, things just filter through. And practice is a word that some people bristle at. They don't like this idea. Oh, I'm practicing meditation. No, I'm practicing this. Well, practice is the operative word. If you wanted to increase your ability to make free throws, for instance, you would take a basketball out and you would practice shooting free throws. If you got 8 out of 10 free throws in, you'd be doing terrific. But also that means that you'd be missing 2 free throws. Steph Curry has an average in the 9th percentile, but he's not perfect. The thing that is, I love the conversation, and this very week, I had the opportunity to meet some old friends one day after another, and we had wonderful, glowing conversations. The thing that is, I love a good conversation. I love it when you just hit that right note of communication. When a conversation can be a door, a pathway to richer understanding. But I also understand now that I've come across harshly at times. I've said the wrong thing in the heat of conversation, and that wrong thing gets remembered more than any other thing I've said. So what is right speech? And again, I refer to Emmanuel here. First off, no falsehoods, no lies, no stretching the truth. I went to a Belland family picnic last Sunday, and a close relative of mine told a story again about when he was playing basketball in his glory days, and now he'd come up against one of the premier players in the state at the time, and he held that opponent to X amount of points while he scored X amount of points. And every time he tells this story, he scores more points and his opponent scores less. And you might say, well, let the poor guy go, he's spinning the yarn, which is true. But then it kind of casts doubt on the next story. You know what I mean? Or there's that danger of becoming that blathering old man who just keeps rehashing the same stories over and over again. That's number one, no lies. No stretching the truth. I found it very handy to not stretch the truth, because then I don't have to remember my lie. No idle gossip. Gossip can be very harmful to people. I'm in a studio situation where people are talking about each other all the time. And so I am part of your gossip. And my stance has been, well, I'm not going to spread the gossip. That's kind of my conflict resolution there. No talking, number 3, no talking about truths that you don't know. Used to be, I'd say, well, that bill's never going to pass the Senate. Well, now I say, I've been doing a lot of reading on this, and from my personal experience, I would just say that bill is not going to pass the Senate. We'll see. Maybe there's not much difference there between those two things, but actually there's a lot of difference there. All right, what else? Oh. Use your speech to edify. Edify is sort of a word that you might think of it like this. Use your speech to grease the wheels of a conversation instead of ending. Use your speech to help people understand your point. Use your speech to ask questions so that you can understand another person's point of view. Nothing stops a conversation like somebody who knows everything. And those people who know everything are often unpleasant to talk to. Number 5, don't use your speech to divide or criticize. And it's so easy to do. It's so easy to divide or criticize with your speech. You divide or criticize. It's just, I'm up here, you're down there. That kind of thing. I'm a little bit luckier than you are. Blah, 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 blah. I had a better education than you did, so blah, blah, blah. That, just little phrases like that to divide people. Okay, the last one, 7th, the one that has really, really worked. Screen your speech. What am I saying? What am I about to say? And why am I saying it? And I have to say that this has been a journey into self-discovery. I never really understood how subtly divisive some of the things I had to say were. I found myself looking at myself as I was talking. I was talking less, and so I was hearing more. Silence will do that. Silence will help you hear more stuff. And there was part of the whole thing was, as I was more silent myself, I could more clearly hear what people were saying and why they were saying it. It was just a deepening of any conversation. I would have to say that this whole practice, when I first started, it felt like an act. I was an actor, This isn't the real me sitting here. I'm just pretending to be polite. But as time went by, gradually it worked its way into my everyday behavior. The rewards of using right speech were very clear, very fast. The people around me felt safer. Discussions became more interesting and fruitful. I gained friends rather than losing friends. And finally, this is sort of a recent development that I've noticed. Because certain words and attitudes were not coming out of my mouth, they began to disappear from my mind. Now that isn't to say that I kind of go backwards, revert a little bit when the tire goes flat, or the electricity goes out, or the internet goes out. I can still fall apart. No question about it. But I'd say percentage-wise, practice-wise, I'm doing good. Also, practicing right speech this way has made me a happier individual. Just because of the lack of criticism, the lack of negativity, that certain things disappearing from my mind. Just maybe you feel a little lighter in life. The opposite of right speech is what the Buddha called malicious speech. Here, speech is intentionally divisive, inflammatory, and intentionally hurtful. A certain political figure, that many of us know, uses malicious speech with regularity. I'm going to read what my reading that I read from here. When hard, truthful messages have to be given, it's crucial to be clear about intent. Always ask yourself, why am I saying this? What am I really trying to accomplish with these words? It's easy to fool ourselves when we're conversing. We live in a divisive time. I've never felt anything like this since the Vietnam War. I have never taken to the streets and attended rallies for 40 or 50 years, but now it just feels like that time when I have to speak my own truth, or at least demonstrate it. So how do we speak a difficult truth? How do we do that? Diane once had a Bible study class in a different church. She asked me if I would attend. I attended. There were about eight of us sitting around the table. And I don't know how the topic came up, but all of a sudden we were talking about the false notion of evolution and how the world was only so old. Everybody around the table did not believe in evolution. That's how they put it. You don't believe in evolution, do you? And all of a sudden, both Diane and I are on the spot. And I would have to say that wasn't the time right then to tell these people that they were wrong. In fact, maybe that time would never come. This thought does come to my mind. Does anybody's mind really change once you've made up your mind about certain beliefs? Well, part of my conflict here is, as some of you know, I've done 2 books of political cartoons. And all I can say to that is that there's a 13-year-old boy who lives inside me. He has to have his say. He will not be repressed. I do my best to keep him under. I will give you an instance of when someone from the opposite side of the table, political table, actually opened my mind a little bit. I have a brother-in-law who lives outside of Houston, Texas. We are on the opposite sides of the political fence. We neatly evade all political discussions. However, this once, we were eating out over a pre-dinner cocktail, he asked me, in a sidebar, person-to-person discussion, what my opinion was on immigration. And I responded with the usual liberal tropes. We're all immigrants, or descended from immigrants. This is a land of opportunities. We need to safe haven for people who are being persecuted in their own countries. Human beings deserve this. And he responded in a thoughtful way. And he said, you might have different ideas about this if you lived closer to the border. And all of a sudden, I was taken back to my teaching days with that comment. And I remember trying to tame, 30 adolescents and get them all ducks in a row, and now we're doing this, now we're doing that. Get everybody all civilized in the classroom. And then in the door walks 2 immigrant children who don't speak English. Well, this is kind of like throwing, you know where I'm going with this? It was a difficult moment, a difficult integration. And all of a sudden I was thinking, what if you're in a school system that's flooded that way? Anyway, I think he opened up my understanding of how he felt about immigration. I can't say it really has changed my opinion on immigration, but he did open my stance or my understanding of the issue without being nasty. This January, I actually read Moby Dick. It was a New Year's resolution. I promised myself I would do it. I got it over with quickly. The only problem, really, the only real problem that I had with the book was the antiquated use of English that we kind of had to start translating. Hey, Sue, you're nodding. You know what I'm talking about. But regardless of the English, there were some terrific images in this book. There were some amazing moments, and in one of these moments, you've got Captain Ahab, and he's on a boat, whaling boat. He shouldn't be on that boat. He should be back with his ship, the people. But he's out to get Moby Dick. He knows he's there. He's got his harpoon in hand. They're out to get that whale. All of a sudden, the whale emerges before them, and this great white Leviathan is right in front of them. And Moby Dick's back is covered with harpoons from previous incidents. I think all of us carry harpoons around on our backs as we swim through our teeth. A lot of those harpoons that I carry around were things people said. And then it wasn't getting punched in the mouth. It was getting punched in the gut by what somebody said. And often, it was so unconscious. They just blurted something out. And I think right speech is an attempt to stop that kind of thing from happening, and thus stopping suffering of the other person. I'm glad that I found the practice of right speech. I think it has brought a sense of peace and security to those close to me. This practice has been a journey into self-awareness. I think as spiritual people, we do need to counter the flow of hatred and divisiveness, which is all around us. Whether Buddhists or Taoists or Christians, one of the main functions of spiritual life is to decrease, not increase, suffering. I would say that I'm pretty sure that by practicing right speech, I have decreased the suffering of those around me. And in the process, I've become less of a jerk.